Year 11, we are completing chapter 6. We're looking at a case study and it's called Different Perspectives. And looking through different perspectives, we're using the frames. So, this session, we're looking at the cultural frame. So, the artist world is limitless. We've actually discussed that previously. It can be found anywhere far from where he lives or a few feet away. It is always on his doorstep. So, this particular quote reminds you as an art student that you have influence everywhere around you, okay? At your home, at your school, where you live, your family, the things that you watch, the things that you do, okay? So the cultural frame draws our attention to the social world, a world where ideas and values are shared by groups of people. These ideas and values will in some way be reflected in your artworks. After all, art is not created in a vacuum. Favorite saying, art is not created in a vacuum. You are creating artwork based on something that you have seen, something that you have learned, something that has inspired you. Okay, so violence within contemporary culture. So, Portrait of Courage, which was this earlier portrait that was the blood stain on the man's face or the young boy's face. Okay, so Portrait of Courage is part of a series of work called Faces of Courage. In this series, the Year 12 student Chris Carey has drawn on the violence within contemporary culture. So, responding to images of violence from television, film, and the internet. You know yourself that you are probably more desensitized by violence because you have watched it from a very young age and you have been subjected to this viewing in everything that you have been watching, whether it is the way that news is portrayed, the narratives that are displayed through the media, whether it's on social media. You have been brought up in this world of violence, okay, such as gladiator movies and boxing. So you can just pick a action film that is made today in the last 12 months, last 2 years, and watch a movie that was perhaps of the same genre 5, 10, 15 years, and you can see a considerable difference, not just in the acting, but what is actually depicted in that film, in that level of violence. There is a lot of realism. You see a lot more death, pain, suffering today than you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Okay. Chris tapped into the idea of the wounded hero. So, using the cultural frame, Chris explored the idea of violence as entertainment in a wider cultural content. So, historically, he saw that there were links between boxing and the gladiators of ancient Rome, where men would face injury and death, okay, to entertain the masses. That whole concept of the gladiator going out in ancient history and for the entertainment for the people, and it wasn't just the wealthy, it was the whole of society in Rome would congress into these spaces to watch this event happening. Is that not the same thing that we do, though we do that in a separate audience? So we're not all consecutively sitting. We might be if we buy tickets to the boxing MMA, but we're still viewing that violence as a collective. Okay, so the more Chris explored the aspects of violence, the more he realized its cultural significance. So consider, for instance, the number of movies and television shows, including those intended for children, that feature violence. Powerpuff Girls is a good example. They're violent. They're heroes and they're violent towards the villain. But there is still a sense, even though it's a cute cartoon and it is created for an audience that's younger, juvenile, there is still a sense of violence in that narrative in Powerpuff Girls. Okay. They might do it in a very cute way, but there's still a sense of violence. So the object of art is not to reproduce reality, but to create a reality of the same intensity. Okay, so Chris also researched how other artists represent ideas of masculinity. Okay, we hear a lot about toxic masculinity, but he looked at the idea of masculinity. So Chris was particularly influenced by the Australian artist Ben Quilty. So if that is a theme, or that's a concept that you're exploring, Ben Quilty is your artist, is someone you should be researching in depth if masculinity is your theme. Okay, and he who has explored the cultural landscape of his generation of young Australian males. The strong and aggressive strokes in Quilty's painting, okay, in Keys, I think it's Sun, suggests the raw masculine energy of a rock singer screaming the words at the top of his lungs. Quilty's practice is discussed in greater detail in chapter 9 as a case study. Okay, now when we flick over to the next page, you will actually see that there is the inspiration on the technique of painting. You can see that in the students' work here, as well as the established artist Ben Quilty's work. You can see that inspiration. It's not the same, okay? It's not the same because this is a portrait of a more detailed young man, okay? So you can see that Chris has actually created his own narrative on the same subject, using the same materials, but has created his own narrative, okay? So student task 6.2, think about your own body of work and critically view it from the cultural frame and ask yourself the following questions. There are 4. How do the overall ideas and concept of your body of work reflect the world around you? Okay, are you reflecting the place where you live? Are you reflecting what your age? Are you reflecting your parents' influence? Are you reflecting your peer influence? Are you reflecting social issues that are happening currently? How have you represented your views and attitudes towards gender, religion, politics, or society? So when we're talking about culture, it's not just black and white. It's not just I'm a non-Indigenous and I'm an Aboriginal. It's deeper than that. It's about gender, it's about religion, it's about politics, and it's about society. Okay, you are a custodian of your space. Okay, you are a custodian of your space. What gender are you? What is that? Are you defined by gender? Does gender operate for you at a level where it is the things that you do, the things that you wear is because of your gender? Are you questioning what is gender? Is it a social construct? If that interests you, then that's a good theme, that's a good narrative. Explore that. Okay, what religion are you? Are you interested in other religions other than your own? Are you exploring that? Are you new? Are you building on your foundation? Okay, what is your knowledge, or how do you operate in politics, and why don't you think that this matters to you? Because I cannot stress this enough, you're about 2 years, okay, that's 24 months. It goes really quickly, okay, in no time at all. Some of you are probably 12 months away to voting. So that's important. How you view politics, the world, our government, and the things that are structured in society, you have a say on this. You are important because you are the future. You can make change if that's your thing. So politics, I've never been into politics. Now's the time to get into it. Now's the time to ask the questions. Why is this structured? Why do we do this? Why is this a law? Why is this not a law? Why is this happening? okay? And society, okay? You're a custodian of society. What's your contribution to society? What do you do to add value to society? What don't you do? Is your value associated to how society views you? Oh, they're just kids. Why is that so? Why is that so? You do have power. You are a custodian of your own environment, of your own world. Okay? You are culturally significant to your family, to me, to the class. Okay? And these are important questions that you need to answer. Are your signs and symbols and visual codes? We need to uncover some of these signs and symbols. Now, go back to your art elements, basic stuff like line, color, tone, shape. Why did you choose those things? What does it symbolize? Okay, some of them can be abstract, but you need to have some signs and symbols and visual codes specific to your cultural background. Okay, did you use pink because you are a girl? Did you use blue because you're a boy? Okay, why did you choose those things, and how does that relate to your cultural background, your knowledge? Okay, and how will audiences from other culture backgrounds view or understand your body of work? Does it get lost in translation? Say you've created an artwork, it's an Australian artwork, it's about Australian landscape, but a non-Australian audience doesn't quite understand the signs and symbols. Does that happen? Is that what you're trying to achieve as part of your artwork? Because you can, if you're aware of it and there's a reason behind it, it could be part of your conceptual meaning and your strength. So student task 6.2 in this session, 4 questions. You are culturally significant. So a lot of students, because of the environment that you're in, you're like, oh, culture. The first thing that you do is think, okay, culture. I come from a school that is a culture of, we've got really strong culture because we have an Aboriginal population that does dance and dig, and we support and celebrate that culture. But what is your culture? That's a school's culture. What is your culture? Okay, you need to dig deeper and answer these questions for me, and I will check in with you next session.